Good afternoon. My name is Darielle Dixie and I'm a graduate student at the University of South Florida. And today I'll be reviewing the book Girl Boss. It's written by Sophia Amoruso. If you're unfamiliar with the backstory behind Ms. Amoruso, I'll briefly fill you in. She actually started out as an eBay marketplace seller, and her business largely sold eBay vintage items, and she directly marketed them to her MySpace followers. Eventually, she was able to grow this business into an independent retail clothing store with revenue sales that are now in the millions. And this book sort of serves as her business startup memoirs. Now, the book opens with Sophia actually recalling the early years of her childhood, and most of it spent in alternative learning schools, and it sort of shaped her unconventional look on the world and in business. She actually christens all of the audience her girl bosses, and she makes it a point to tell them that she's more street smart than book smart, and it's largely her hard work and her thinking outside the box that led to her having so much success. Sophia does mention that her foray into retail originally started with her taking a job at the Academy of Art University in San Francisco to get benefits so she could pay for some health concerns that she had. She later goes on to quit this job, and to make money, she just starts to sell clothes on eBay as a seller. Eventually, she moves on and does become a very competitive eBay seller. But she kind of makes mention in the book that the marketplace on eBay is very competitive in the second chapter of the book. And there's a little misunderstanding that involved a dress that she was trying to sell on eBay that eventually got her removed from the site as an eBay seller. But that actually turned out to benefit her because she was able to move her business. The business is Nasty Gal, if you're familiar with it, from the eBay marketplace into their very first physical location out in California. I also thought this was interesting that each of the chapters within the book highlights an employee that works within Nasty Gal, and it kind of allows them to share their own journey within the business and how specifically they wound up working within that company. Sophia does recall several events in her life that shaped her business sense. And one example that I enjoyed was a series of jobs that she held prior to starting her company. One was a Subway sandwich artist. Another, she worked as a seller at a bookstore. And I think the last job before she got the job at the Academy of Art, worked at a high-end retail shoe store. She actually calls this period job promiscuity, which I thought was a little funny. But she does note that this was important to have these series of jobs because it showed her what she was not interested in doing professionally. Another story that she recalls is sort of her hitchhiking and shoplifting time period. She doesn't make any excuses for stealing, but she does mention that in stealing she sort of stopped because she learned the value of things and working hard for those items rather than just taking them. She also talks about hitchhiking and kind of had a really nomad lifestyle when she was hitchhiking. She talks about this in the fourth chapter of the book, and it's mainly to explain her early viewpoints on being very anti-capitalist, anti-corporate, and how she sort of pulled back from those views now as a system that she previously shunned but sort of embraces because it helped her business. The 11th and final chapter of the actual book closes with Sophia noting that her startup businesses, most of them have a very low success rate, and that during the early years, she thinks that her success was due to her growing the company in very small increments. And she actually refers to this in the book as being incremental potential of a business. Now, overall, I found that there were three specific themes that stood out to me that Sophia Amoruso repeats a great deal in the book. And number one is be responsible. Number two is to be creative. And number three is to be prepared in business. Now, with number one being responsible, this is a takeaway that she actually spends an entire chapter within the book talking about. It's chapter 5. And she recalls sort of the very end of her shoplifting days. And it happened on when she was in a store and she was looking to buy an item. And basically what happened is the salesperson sold her a store credit card, and she did not realize it was a store credit card until later. And she basically didn't pay off the purchase when she bought it on credit. And the result was it messed up her credit really bad. And she had a very terrible credit score for a while. And this led to when she needed additional funding for Nasty Gal, once it got off eBay, venture capitalists were not really interested in giving her any money. She couldn't get a loan from a bank because she didn't have any good credit. And so she actually wound up starting this company debt-free, which actually is really rare for most companies. They do have to take out a business loan at some point. She advises her audience to primarily use cash in the beginning and just stay away from credit cards in general when they're first starting out in business. And, she still had the bad credit history for years after that. She actually talks about her first big purchase item, which was a Porsche. And she had to kind of finagle her way into getting a better deal on that because her credit was so bad. So be responsible. Number 2 is really to be creative. This is a theme throughout the book, but as a takeaway, it deals specifically with having limited resources and knowing how to use what's available for you to you for the better. She actually dives into this in the 2nd chapter during her time when she starts to take off as an eBay seller. She describes how she got most of her early inventory, the vintage clothing, mainly from going around looking for estate sales and kind of haggling in the consignment stores for lower prices of the clothes that were actually up for sale. And this extends to her hiring her first set of models to sell the clothing. She mostly paid them in food, and that's also in chapter 5. She advises her audience not to be afraid to ask for things for discount or to try to cut a deal with somebody. And she closes on this point in chapter 9 when she suggests that while everyone can't be an entrepreneurial, you should have the entrepreneurial spirit and pursue new opportunities whenever they become available to you. The last takeaway I got is be prepared in business. Sophia Amoruso, she mainly uses the 9th chapter of her book to lecture her audience about this. She recalls actually getting to the point where venture capitalist groups started coming to her business when it became profitable, and how unconventional that she is in comparison to a lot of other people that are in business and are looking for venture capitalists or for venture. She has no formal education. I think she did maybe a few years in college and just decided it wasn't from her. She started her company with no debt, and she was already turning a very big profit by the time the venture capitalists wound up coming to her. She actually provided a list of do's and don'ts if you're meeting with investors. And the do's have something that has scalability, evidence of demand, the outside validation, and uniqueness. The don'ts are don't be overconfident. Don't appear to be looking for an immediate exit plan for your business when you're meeting with these venture capitalists. And just general being tardy and unprepared. No one's going to like that when they're trying to help you out and give you some money for your company. She does end by explaining that she hopes future business owners avoid a lot of the pitfalls that a lot of people make that wound up getting them rejected for any additional capital. Now, my favorite quote was in this book. It says, "Living a comfortable life, it can allow you the psychic space needed to focus on often bigger things. And when you treat your possessions as emblems of your hard work, they inherit a meaning that transcends the objects themselves." And I really liked that quote, stood out to me. I picked it because it sort of summarizes Sophia Amoruso's journey. She lived a really bohemian lifestyle, and it's by pure fate she wound up turning this kind of side hustle on eBay into a multi-million-dollar company. And along the way, she learned the importance of hard work and the rewards that it can bring you in the end. I just want to close the summary by noting that this book was actually released in 2014, and within 2 years after that, around 2016, Nasty Gal the business ran into some financial troubles and it had to be sold off. But Sophia has had sort of a rebirth. She's actually gone on to become a media mogul. She runs, I think it's Girl Boss Media. And it actually caters to young women and helps them, guides them on how to start a business. She has a lot of conventions. She has scholarships. I think they have a podcast. And she just seems to have a really unique eye for business ventures. Well, that was the book Girl Boss by Sophia Amoruso. Thank you for your time, and I would definitely recommend that you read it. It's really fun and it's interesting, but it still is based on a lot of business advice. and it's a really wonderful rags to riches story. Thank you.